Welcome to the Emerge Leadership Connection, the podcast that gives you the keys to unlock your heroic potential, develop into a legendary leader, and emerge into who you are meant to be. On today's episode, we have a conversation with Brandy Gillmore, who's a Hall of Fame martial artist, and we discuss the accident that put her in a wheelchair, forcing her to use a walker and cane, and how she utilized the mind to overcome her physical disabilities, and how she today teaches others to do the same. I'm your host, Cody Dakota, founder of the Leadership Guide and finalist for the Extraordinarian Award for coaches with ideas that can change people, businesses, and the world for the better for my ideas on leadership. Stay tuned to the end of the episode to discover how to join the League of Legendary Leaders, an association of leaders with the goal to raise $100,000 monthly to support nonprofit causes which are currently looking to impact the world and make it better for future generations. Now, on to the show. Hey Brandy, how are you doing today?
I am doing fabulous. Thank you so much, Cody. How are you?
I am living life and I am loving life. I'm super excited. Actually, just because this is really quick on my mind, life is awesome, but I am super sore right now because I'm excited about this and I'm like half regretting this. I made a recent decision that I'm going to go for a Spartan trifecta this year, which basically means a lot of running and a lot of exercise, which I'm not prepared for at all. And my first race is in a month and a half. And I'm nowhere near ready. So this week, like literally I signed up for this Sunday and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then today I've been working out harder than I've worked out since college. And I'm super sore right now, but I'm so excited because it's totally going to be worth it.
You know what? It is. When you get more and more fit, I actually just went to the gym earlier this morning and I love working out and lifting weights and just staying in shape. It's just like, there's something about it, body, mind, it keeps you strong. So I love that. And I love that you just said, you signed up and said, okay, let me just do this. Whenever somebody signs up for something and says, okay, this is outside of my comfort zone, let me step outside. This isn't something I normally do. And let me just do it. It's just so many people get into routine. So I love that.
Exactly. And I think that's actually a huge problem is so many people get into that set routine. And then when something difficult comes up out of nowhere, it screws everything up for them mentally. And that kind of is like they can't continue forward. And I think it's a problem in our world, especially in the business world, whether it's like something happened in the family, whether it's like something happened with your kid's school or something with a client just happened out of nowhere and now your whole routine's thrown off and it's downhill from there. And when you purposely put yourself out of the way to get uncomfortable and do things that are not your norm and just break those old habits and start new habits and then break other habits and start new habits here and there, you just kind of you're always ready for whatever comes.
Exactly. And not only that, but you don't just habitually let your life pass you by, so to speak, where you just fall into the same habit. And I love, I don't know how much you know about my story, but I was injured for many years, wheelchair, walker, cane, morphine, just in extreme pain. And once I figured out how to come out of that, one of the things that I did was, I was working on, I was 5'9" and 5'8", 5'9", and down to 93 pounds. I was below a size 0. I was nothing. But when I was recovering and stuff I started working out with bodybuilders. And then I knew that there was these different phases of okay, well, I'm going to sign up for this. And I wasn't quite ready, but it made me get ready. It was pacing myself. So I love that you said that you just signed up for it and go for it. I literally would put myself in aerobics. After I had gotten to a certain point, I was okay, this is the next point that's above me. And it was like some aerobics class where you go into those aerobics classes and you, like, if you've ever seen them before, where everybody in the class is doing things at the exact time and all of this. And I was still like, you know, coming back from like working on walking without my cane again, working on running. So I was like, I know I don't want to embarrass the heck out of myself. And I was like, but I signed up and I was like, okay, well, I knew it would make my mind want to get even like faster on board with coordination.
Definitely. Yeah. It's kind of like if you're trying to improve yourself in any way, you want to be the worst person in the room so that you improve more quickly, right? Whether it's like you want your business to grow quickly, so you get around people who are a bit bigger business, or like you want to become better in a relationship, so you find that people who've had relationships longer than you, or you want to become better at faith, so you go find a group of people that have been in the faith and who've been working on their faith a lot more strongly than you have, and it's kind of like it picks your boat up much more quickly.
Absolutely. And it makes, I mean, with the right mindset, absolutely, because you're like, okay, I don't want to be, if you're somebody who has a mindset that says, I don't want to be last place. I mean, some people, they get their mind where it falls in a place where they don't intentionally get it there, but it gets into like a victim mode. And so they kind of like get stuck in the last place role. And so, but if you're definitely somebody who says, okay, look, I want to take my life to the next level. And you do, you put yourself in a place that's purposely uncomfortable and go, okay, well, let me really use this to fuel myself. Absolutely. So I did a lot of that. Like we went from, okay, first Pilates. And when I first did Pilates, I was like, okay, well, you know, coming back from wheelchair, walker, cane, all of that, I was like, okay, Pilates is an easy enough class. And when I got in it, I was like, okay, oops.
Yeah, Pilates is not easy at all.
I know. I know. But
it is not easy. It's not easy. It is
right? But okay, so I've been I'm like Hall of Fame martial arts, been to like nationals, competitions all over, everywhere awesome. With martial arts.
I love to talk about that because I'm a huge martial arts enthusiast, by the way. I love martial arts, and I've been doing martial arts for about 20 years now. So that's
I love it. I love it. I love martial arts. And so coming from that, I was like, you know, I mean, I went through my injury and all that. I'm like, I'll start out with something like Pilates. And I got it and I'm like, okay, it looks easier than it really is.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I feel like there are so many physical activities out there that are like that. Like you look at it and you're like, oh, that can't be that difficult. And then you start doing it and you're like, what did I do to myself? Oh my God.
You're like, oh, I have muscles that I didn't realize were there. Yeah. Absolutely, which is fun. I mean, which is fun. What type of martial arts did you do?
I did Taekwondo, was the vast majority of my martial arts background. I've also done Judo. I've done some Aikido. I'm currently working in Tai Chi. And then I've also studied on my own a variety of different martial arts. So that was like without a master instructor, just seeking out videos and seeking out books and just trying to get that knowledge for myself.
I love it. I love it. It's so it's so expansive. I think that the mind and body are so connected, and that's, you know, it just anything that gives you like having a strong mental strength. When you have an ability to be regimented in yourself, it like not only mentally but physically, so you get yourself to follow through with things, and part of that is working out and exercising and building your physical strength and pushing your physical strength, and so I love that you're like going, okay, well, this is what I learned, and how do I look more outside the box? Beautiful.
Yeah, well, and I think that some of the greatest insights into anything come from outside of the box. There's a great book called Rise as Superman, which is written by Stephen Kotler. He's really famous for digging into flow psychology. And in that book, he talks about all these different sports athletes is the main focus of the book, and how the people who kind of made the biggest impact in their sport ended up finding the keys to those biggest impacts from other sports outside of what they were actually doing.
Absolutely. And I know that you talk a lot about leadership. And I think that that is a huge key to leadership also, is that I feel like, and it's about finding that special something. You know, you see, when you have something that's unique, to me, that's a key to leadership, is looking outside of the box and finding that unique thing that is your you and bringing that to the table. And so, and that's, I would say that every sport, if you look at anybody in sports and you look at, as you were talking about, but whatever it is, they find their own unique way of doing something that is specific to them. And it's not about copying what everybody else is doing. It's about finding that spot, you know, that sweet spot.
Definitely. And one of the most, in business, one of the most famous examples of that is Steve Jobs. Now, I don't think like Steve Jobs was like this ultra miracle person like a lot of people do. I actually personally am not an Apple fan. There may be some people who hate me for that.
Yeah, I might be one of those.
That's okay. That's okay.
I'm joking.
You're allowed to be wrong. No, I'm just kidding. But
I like, well said.
The genius thing with Steve Jobs, love him or hate him, or you know what indifference about him, what he did within the phone industry was spectacular, because he went into the phone industry with this concept where most people are thinking like, okay, the phone's got to be the next business extension basically, and how do we make it more like a computer? And he said, no, I think we should go in a completely different direction. He's more of a creative guy and a marketing guy, so he said, okay, how do we make the product more artsy? And he went into the music industry because he saw the MP3 player and he thought that's what would be the next big thing. And he dove into that and he made it look super sexy. At the time, it was one of the sexiest looking devices out there. And it killed as a product and it destroyed everything else out there because he brought his own unique talents to it.
Absolutely. And I think that's a huge, I think when somebody can bring their own unique talents and their own unique insights and really bring that to the table and then step into it fully. I mean, even in what I do, you know, I work with the mind with healing. I mean, it's something that I never saw. Like the things that I do now are things that I've never seen anybody do before. And it was just like, I was like, okay, this should be possible based on what I've figured out. This should be possible. And now let me figure out how to do it. And so I think it's about having a vision and going after it. So I love that when you have a vision and you go after it, and it's something unique. It's powerful. There's power in it.
There's huge power in it. Because there's another guy I like to follow. His name's Christopher Lochhead. One of his big things he talks about is niching down, right? It's about how do I create something that's completely unique so that I don't actually have competitors. And then once I bring that to the market, I become the big whatever in that industry because there's no one else there, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love that. And I love that. And it's also about obviously then rapid growth, because once you do that, you know, it's really about then looking at how quickly to be able to lead and absolutely grow and expand.
Definitely. So let's dive into your backstory, because oh my goodness, at the beginning of this, you told me a lot. I didn't know any of that, to be honest. I did not know all the difficulties you went through. So it sounds like it's a lot.
You know, it is. And it was something that I never thought. I mean, I grew up with martial arts. I was always, the very first time I went to Junior Olympics, I was like 12 years old. And that was the first time. And then, you know, national, a lot of different things after that. So I had been martial arts and in amazing shape and competing, like that was my life. And then I got into network engineering, but basically I had an accident. Actually I had two accidents, and a car accident and then a fall. And I ended up disabled and like wheelchair, walker, cane. On a good day, I could get around with my wheelchair, walker, cane. On a bad day, I didn't make it out of bed. I didn't want to. I was in so much pain. I didn't want to breathe. And that was my life for about 7 years.
Dang.
And yeah, you never think that, like, that was the last place that I ever would have thought that my life would go. And they said that I went from like, one specialist after another trying to get better. And everybody just said there was nothing they could do for me, and I had like nerve ablations, infusions, injections. I mean, they were trying to do whatever, but it was crazy.
Yeah. So what did that do to you mentally? Because I think there's so many people, sometimes even including me, where when you're doing well physically, you can't even imagine what it's like to go from that healthy, standing, perfect state to like something isn't perfect anymore. Whether it's I can't walk, whether it's I can't use my arm, whether it's whatever it is for them, right? Like, how did that happen? Like, what happened to you mentally during that time?
The best way to describe it mentally during that time would be to think of it like this. It just, do that. Sure. And then, it was a roller coaster. It was, I learned a lot of things about my mind. At first, 7 years is a long time. So, at first it was basically like, okay, well, I just got to find the right doctor. Like, yeah, this one. Okay, well, let me just find a different one. And so that was this waiting game of trying to distract myself until the next specialist was 3 weeks out. Let me just get to them and they're going to be able to help me. And then they can't. And then the next one. And then it just becomes like every time your optimism starts to fade. And then you find yourself going. And then every time somebody says no, you just crash. And then you have no hope. And then when you have no hope, like when I went through the phase of no hope, and nothing to look forward to, and would I ever have a real future, and how could I live every day in so much pain? Even though I was on morphine, I was still in morphine and Neurontin and Norco and lidocaine. I was on so many medications and still in a lot of pain. And so I was like, I think that as human beings, we always have to have something to be able to look forward to. And if, like, whether we're injured or not injured, to stay out of if we can look forward to something in life and we can be passionate about life, it can keep a smile on our face, and it helps to put a smile on our face and keep our mind in an optimistic place. And so, when you don't, like, I was a mess. And so I learned, that I had to really, it was it really got me into a place of just needing to find hope. And, there was all different types of phases. I just hoped that they would come out with like a new procedure and somebody would discover something new. And so I went, finally, like, it happened. I thought, oh my God, this is the best day of my life. The place I had been going to finally called me and said, oh my God, there's a new trial procedure and you get to be a part of it. And I was like, oh my God, like, God's answered my prayers. This is going to happen. I'm so excited. And then I got there and they basically said, like, you can't be a part of the study. We don't expect you to get better. And I hit like my rock bottom. And then I got indignant. Then I got to this place where it was like, you know what? You can't figure it out. I'm going to figure it out. And was a beautiful turning. So my rock bottom turned into my indignant determination to figure it out. And that was pivotal.
Definitely. What would you attribute to your ability to not give up when all hope seems to be gone? What was it that kept you going anyways?
I would say that there's a few things. I would say that if I could see like, I've always been somebody who's looked outside of the box. And if there was a possibility, then I was open to it. And so for a while I was like searching different supplements, and I was like, oh, this supplement, oh, this diet, oh, blah, blah, blah. And so that kept me going for a while until everything kept failing. And then, and then you get kind of like, well, you know, that's not going to work, and you get there. But I would say that a turning point for me, it was a few things. It was, I had, you know, just always been an overachiever, somebody who looks outside the box for anything. I was somebody who, you know, I finished high school early, went to college early, all of these things. So I was always somebody who was willing to think outside the box. That was one thing. I would say another thing is I started looking at, you know, finding the solution, and I started finding stuff that didn't make sense, like the placebo. I was like, well, wait a second here. If we know that the placebo has the ability to impact the body, then why aren't we using it? So it's not that, so maybe I still can get better, because a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. And I started finding things that didn't make sense, like somebody who's got multiple personality disorder can have different personalities when different ailments, different physical ailments, different body temperature, different allergies, different pain when they're in different personalities.
Really?
And yeah. So all of this stuff, I started going, this doesn't make sense what we're doing. Or, I mean, have you ever heard before that the body's constantly repairing and replacing itself?
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. It's estimated that even our bones take about 10 years or so, depending upon the study, to repair and replace themselves. And then I started going, well, how is it possible then for somebody to have that old football injury from high school, if they're 50, if their bones and everything? I started going, well, wait a second. Like, if the body's constant, like a lot of, like even MPD, you know, multiple personality disorder, when I started looking at that, I started just looking at a lot of things that didn't make sense, because that research study actually made me start thinking about the placebo. And I was like, well, wait a second. If our mind has the ability to heal the body somehow, then there's got to somehow be hope. And if there was hope, then I couldn't give up. And so that just became a journey of being willing to do whatever it takes to figure out the answer.
Definitely. So it sounds like there's a couple of really important keys in that. One is looking for the opportunities, right? And the opportunities may not work out. A lot of the opportunities may not work out. But what it seems like is you went from one opportunity to the next opportunity to the next opportunity, and you kept finding more opportunities. Kind of like the new car effect. When you decide on a new car, all of a sudden you start to see that same car everywhere. And it's not that everyone just suddenly up in the blue bought the same car, right? It's that you just didn't have your focus there. And so because your focus was on getting better, you would find opportunity after opportunity after opportunity that had the potential to make you better. It may not have actually worked, but you kept finding new opportunities. Two, you just had a fighter spirit. You just didn't want to give up. And then three, you looked for outside the box you didn't just focus in on one area. You said, okay, well, I'm not finding success in this area. Where else can I find success? What other industry can I look for in success? Because when people are thinking about how do I heal my body, they're not necessarily thinking about the mind. They're not thinking about psychology. And so that's a field completely outside of it, right? And that's all fueled by curiosity, right? And I feel
absolutely. What's that? You feel what?
I feel like that's a huge piece, curiosity. Just like, this is odd. I wonder. And you kept digging.
Absolutely. I think that there is a certain amount, I would say that whether you want to call it God, the universe, divine, I think that God is with us along the way if we just pay attention to it. And I think that when we, like for instance, that research study was really great in a lot of ways, because it made me think all the way reading up to the research study. I was thinking, please don't get the placebo. Please don't get the placebo. I want the real treatment. And you know, and so having such a a hope to get better, but then afterwards going, well, wait a second, the placebo, that's what made me start looking at the mind. Otherwise, I would have not taken the mind seriously. And even then I was like, yeah, what are the chances that I can somehow figure out how to make the placebo work? But you start seeing it, and once you are willing to step outside of and get a new way of thinking. So, Einstein's famous quote, no problem can be solved by the same level of consciousness that created it. And so, like, you've been saying, and we've been talking about, is looking outside of the box doesn't just mean avoiding looking outside of what everybody else is doing. It actually also means looking outside of your own box and being willing to look at things from a different perspective. Because a lot of times when people look outside of the box, they're still in their own box of beliefs and ideas. And so, to me, the placebo and ever trying to heal that way and whatnot, was ridiculous. And I had a limited way of thinking at that time. I mean, when we stop and look at the body, what is the body made of? It's made of atoms. It's made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and so when I first started looking at it, I thought, how is my mind going to heal my physical body? And so I had that limited way of thinking. And so what did I do? I specifically started looking at the atoms of the body and researching that and going, okay, well, let me think on that level. Let me dive into this way of thinking and explore this. Let me see where it is. Let me see where it's not. So that's when I started looking at MPD, or technically multiple personality disorders, now called dissociative identity disorder, so DID. But either way, I started looking at objectively. So I didn't have to color it with my mind. Where is this at? Where is it not? Is that true? Is it not true? And the things that were obstacles for my mind, instead of avoiding them, I looked directly at them. And I think that that's key also, is that, like, even in our medical system, placebo doesn't really make sense to anybody. Mm-hmm. Or DID, or multiple personality, that whole thing doesn't really make sense. And so we avoid it and pretend like it's not there. And instead I say, okay, if we can't figure something out, let me not avoid it. Let me look at that and make sense of it and see what's happening. So I think that that's looking outside of the box, but also having the courage to look at the things that make us uncomfortable and the things that we don't understand, to move through it instead of avoidance.
Definitely. I think that right there describes a huge challenge that many leaders face. It's that this is the way we've always done it, right? And you bring this new idea to me, and, well, it's not the way we've done it in the past, right? And so many companies just die because they're not willing to even think about what is the new things out there. They're not even willing to consider it. They're just like, we're going to continue doing it this way because it's the way it's always been done. And if they would just take a moment to consider the other possibilities, to consider maybe this new thing has some sort of validity, maybe this new person, even though they're brand new to the organization, maybe they actually know something that the rest of us don't, right? If they would just take a little bit of time to just consider something else, even though it may not quite register right with them at first, there would be so many businesses that would stay in business. There would be so many leaders who would have teams more dedicated to them because they're willing to actually be open to these new ideas. And I mean, I think innovation could be gigantic if that was a more common theme.
Absolutely. I agree. And I would say, I've worked with different leaders personally with their mindset and different things like that, with coaching, like business and stuff like that. And I would say that, that like exactly like you said, and I'm sure you would agree. I've seen a lot of avoidance of things, like when people don't know something, instead of actually trying to understand it and wrap their mind around it, a lot of times there is a level of avoidance, a level of not wanting to look at what they don't really understand and know, or even see that there's a problem. And instead what they do is they keep doing the things that they do know, and they keep doing them over and over.
Yeah.
And so
I think a part of that, one is avoidance and not wanting to admit that something may be wrong. And another part of it, I think, is also tying back to what we were talking about earlier, is curiosity, right? They're just not curious about what else is out there, and it leads to their downfall.
Absolutely. And I agree. And also, I would say, and also sometimes fear of what's challenging. So sometimes it's almost like, let's say that there's something we really don't know how to handle and we don't know what to do. A lot of times it's like all of a sudden, all of these procrastination, we'll have all of these tasks that we do know how to do will distract us from what we don't know how to do.
Yeah.
And you know exactly. I can tell by your laugh.
Exactly
Exactly
what you're talking about. I've done that before, and two, because I have clients that have done that too.
Yeah, I've never done that before. I'm perfect.
Uh-huh.
I think we can all say, but it's funny because when you notice it, then you observe yourself and you go, oh, wait a second. Because I think part of being a leader is also having a level of self-awareness to say, oh, I'm doing that. Like, let me own my own stuff. and say, okay, that it's great that it doesn't have to be about being perfect, So I was joking around about being perfect, but it's never about being perfect. It's about being willing to be imperfect or perfect, and not having a judgment about it, but being willing to be flexible and to observe and continue to change. But that thing about going, oh, this is hard, and it's somehow like we end up with all of these tasks that we could do that are routine tasks instead of doing what's hard or what's outside of the box, and our brain would much rather be consumed by them, and there's that level of avoidance. If I was to say one of the main things that I've seen people fail at is that there's the hard thing, the challenging thing that they don't know how to do, and that becomes the area of avoidance instead of learning how to do it in an effective way.
Or even if it's not them learning how to do it, but finding someone else who knows more about it to guide them down that path, right? Whether it's like you're physically injured and you need help getting uninjured, right? Like you've done, or like you're the business owner, right? And this happens with a lot of smaller businesses. And they're like, well, I'm afraid to do the marketing for my business. Okay, nothing wrong with being afraid to do the marketing. Go find someone who's better at marketing. But
they don't have the money to do it. But they blah, blah, blah. And then it's, it's always the next excuse.
Yeah.
But I don't have I don't have this curiosity.
And then it goes back to curiosity and looking for new trying to get a fresh way of looking at it, right? Because so many people are like, I don't have enough money, right? Mm-hmm. Well, there's always a way to pay. That's the thing, right? There's always a way to pay, and pay isn't always money, right?
Are you suggesting prostitution right now?
I'm not suggesting that.
Okay, just checking.
I don't think anyone
There's
should.
Always a way to pay. Like, wait a second.
I mean, there are people who do that in the world.
I just figured I'd throw you off a bit.
Go to, but you know what? People will do what they're going to do, but what I'm saying is maybe you can do business trading, right? Well, I have this service you need, and you have this service that I need. Let's trade this business service so we can both grow. That's an
exactly.
option.
Or even being willing to just take the step of imperfection, because a lot of people don't start because, well, then what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do this, and it's going to have to be perfect, and it's going to cost me all this stuff. And you just go, wait a second, just next level it, because once you do take a step, then there's a tweak, then there's a step, then it's just sometimes just going, okay, what's that next simple step that I can do? And as long as I can get myself to start following through, then it's the next step.
Exactly.
It's just, but I think that, like even in my, in what I do and in my own journey, I had to start seeing that, like with MPD, or even like people as far as amputees still having pain. I was like, well, it doesn't make sense that I literally thought to myself, oh my God, somebody who has no limb, literally 80% chance 80% chance that they're still going to be in pain, right? Yes. I was like, wait a second. So I could literally
pain, right? Where yes. Their arm is gone or their leg is gone and they're like, I still feel my toes. And their toes obviously are not there, but they still feel it, right? It's that phantom pain, right?
Exactly. So there's over 80% chance that it's still experiencing. I'm going, wait a second. So there's like over 80% chance that I could literally cut off my body, amputate my body, which was obviously I wasn't being serious, but in my thinking, I was a bit jaded at the time, and I'm like, great. So now I could literally amputate and there's still 80% chance I'd still be in pain. What the heck? And so, but that again made me look at the mind and go,
if I cut off the source, it should be done, right? And apparently that's not actually true.
Exactly. But what was great was that the more that I saw evidence that it like led back to the mind, the more hope that it gave me. And so I think sometimes what happens is, even on my days when I had no hope, it was hard to be happy. It was hard to, like, I couldn't get myself to rally. I couldn't get myself to want to, like, it was just like, let me just try to just avoid this day and like do whatever I can to just make it to the end of the day. And I think that, you know, depending where a person's at, like if somebody feels like, oh, there's no way to do this because of the marketing, or there's no way to do this because of this, then it's sometimes, if that's where their mind is at, then it's just about getting the evidence to be able to get some hope. And then once hope springs, just like you mentioned, the car idea, once you start seeing the car, you start seeing more and more of it. So even what I do a lot of times today, because let's be honest, healing with the mind doesn't make logical sense to most people. And so a lot of times what I'll do when I'm giving a talk or on stage or, you know, in different things, I'll take people who've been in chronic pain for years and I show them how to release it in minutes using just their mind. And I'll even do it under medical equipment so people can see it. They can experience this. So they're really like blown away by what they're capable of. And so I love to show people, because then they go, wait a second, this is, it makes them to have to start to see what they couldn't see before. And so I would say that's also a big thing. A pivotal point is starting to see what you couldn't see before. So whether it's towards marketing or it's towards a problem that's going on, maybe you can't see it in your own organization or your own business, but then going, okay, where can I start to see evidence of a breakthrough somewhere? And then, you know, and then it gives you hope to take it to the next level. And so, and maybe it's hiring the right person to help you get your mind there to help see the evidence to take it to the next level. And yeah. So, but knowing
whether it's a therapist or a counselor or a teacher or finding a new mentor, right?
Exactly. Because if you can't get your mind to be able to break through that barrier of the impossible, then
quote unquote impossible.
Exactly. Whatever, I mean, marketing impossibility or this like whatever that stumbling block is, if your mind can't see through it, you're not going to be able to get through it. And a lot of times that's the avoidance, and it's going, okay, well, let me just start to, like you said, hire somebody, get somebody, find evidence of it. Let me get my mind to start breaking through that barrier to the next level. And so that's, you know, that's obviously, you know, a lot of my leadership space is using the mind and using healing and understanding what the mind is able to do in our lives. And, you know, even if you look at the Bible says a merry thought is a medicine to the body. Ill thoughts will dry the bones. And and so when you start to look at that for a moment, you go, it's even like, so when I was looking around, I was like, it's even in the Bible. And so, I think that, you know, breaking through and being willing to manage our minds to make it to the next level is so key.
Definitely. So you start discovering all this crazy seeming stuff that doesn't make any sense to people. They're like, this is true, but we don't understand why it's true. It's there, but we don't actually understand how it works, right? So what is the next step for you? Because you've obviously built a whole system around these different kinds of concepts. how do you go from seeing the ideas, seeing these kind of strand ends per se, right? And pulling them together to build a quilt?
Are you saying in general or in what I do or
What you do? Yeah.
First and foremost, I got better for me. I never planned on getting into what I do now. I literally thought it was all about, let me just, I was in survival mode. How do I get my life back? I didn't know if I had a future or no future, because I knew I had no quality of life and, or low quality of life. I wouldn't say no, but, the diagnoses that I had been given and different things like that, you just don't think, oh my God, like I can, you don't really think you have a future. And so it wasn't about, oh, let me teach this to somebody, let me start helping people. It was really just about, let me figure this out for me.
Definitely.
And then once I did that,
go
ahead.
Really quick, I think that is so important, because how many people want to go out and change the world completely and they have no idea how to take care of themselves? Like, that happens so much. And they're like, I want to build the next great thing. And then they can't even pay their bills. And it's on the airlines, right? What's one of the things they always say? Put the breath mask on you before you put it on your child or the elderly couple next to you. And they say that, right? Because if you can't breathe, you can't help your child, right? And if the plane crashes, right, you have died because you didn't put the life mask on first, and now your child or your elderly person is probably going to be stuck in the seat and you can't help them anyways. So you put the mask on you so that then you actually have the ability to actually help the people around you. And then a lot of times, right, it's not just your kid right next to you, right, but it's the person asleep right next to them, or it's the elderly couple across the aisle from you. And instead of helping one person, because you helped yourself first, you have the ability to help far more people than you could have done before you helped yourself first.
A million times over. I think that on so many levels, not only, like you were saying, having the energy to do it and the ability to do it, but also the real know-how to do it. Like, honestly, like I see a lot of, in truth, I see a lot of people in the healthcare industry or working in health that have bad health themselves, and they have all these health issues and they're trying to help others and their results aren't that great. And it's like, they're not even healed themselves. And so, you kind of go, wait a second here. And so, if I don't want to say anything negative about anybody, but you just go, wait a second. And so I think that part of being any type of leadership is walking your walk. It's not the moment of leadership. It's the day-to-day, who you are in yourself, who you are being in yourself, and really being able to get results and doing that. And I think that's where real knowledge comes from. And that's where real strength comes from. And so, yeah. And so it was really all about me.
And the things that I'm thinking of just real quick. In my business, I have 4 main values. It's faith, family, freedom, future, in that order. And then faith, the way I describe faith, there's a sub value in there, which I say is excellence, right? And when I talk about excellence, I say that mediocre is unacceptable, but perfection is unattainable. But by gradually getting better every day, you achieve excellence, right? And it's about taking the steps to make yourself better to get to excellent, right? So that you can actually do everything you're trying to do.
Absolutely. And I think that there is, like when you say that, there is such a, when we look at perfectionism, you get stuck in that. But when you go to mediocre, it means you're not bringing 100% of you to the table. Because anything, if that's the best you can do, then you are shooting for excellence. And wherever that is. There was a time when I did mediocre at everything, but it was my best. So it was my way to excellence. And I think but it didn't feel like mediocre.
Yeah. Excellence is different for different people, right? Excellent to one person may be being able to stand, right? Excellence to another person may be raising their business 100% in the next year. Excellence to another person may be helping my child get from grade 5 to grade 6, right? So excellence is going to be different depending on who you are.
Absolutely. Agreed. And I've had people where I've helped them take their business from losing millions. So even one person right now, her business just made 137 million, I think, this year. From losing 2.5 million 2 years ago. And so
that's called results right there.
That's called what?
That's called results right there.
Absolutely. And even working with her, it was, what did we change? Her way of thinking, her habits, her way of thinking, willing to face the things that she was avoiding, willing to really shift it, willing to follow through with things, but a lot of self-change, willing to grow. And so, that's key. And that's what makes a great leader. And she, by changing herself in her company, really changed the rest of the company also in a huge way. And so, her habits and all of that, but going back to, my injury, it was like, I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to get better myself. And then it was all about, okay, well, once I do, I'm going to go back to doing network engineering and operations. And I'm just going to tell the doctors what I did. And I'm sure they're going to want to help everybody and all of these things, because healthcare is going backwards. It's like, even if you look at the last 3 years, age expectancy in the US has been going backwards. So people aren't living longer. They're actually living shorter for the last 3 years. And not only that, but the amount of time that a person will spend in their life disabled is going up. And the amount of people that are sick. No. And it was projected in the year 2000 that chronic illness would continue to increase for the next 30 years. And in 2015, they said, not only is that happening for the amount of people who are sick, but the people who are sick, the amount of people that have 3 or more chronic illnesses will continue to increase also. It's expected to almost triple until the year 2030.
Well, that sounds like it's crazy. Terrible. That means something as terrible is happening in our medical systems.
And why is that happening if technology is improving and all of these things are improving? And the reality of it is, it goes back to the insane way of thinking that it actually has to do with the mind. Because, okay, so I think you had mentioned at some point, but depression's at an all-time high.
Yeah.
And you start to look at the mind link between, there's a lot of different things that go on with the mind. And that's why, like, a lot of people who've seen my TED Talk, they're like, when they start to see, oh my God, when you really break it down and you start looking at the mind, it's profound. And kind of the way that I got into it was, I was like, okay, look, I'm just going to heal myself. And then I'm going to give it to the doctors. They're going to want to do something with it. And that didn't happen. Then I was like, okay, well, look, everybody's going to think I'm crazy that I healed myself from that incredible, like that terrible injury. And now I'm great. Like now I'm working out with bodybuilders, lifting hundreds of pounds and leg pressing and all this stuff. And they're like, and so what I did is I wanted to show people how to be able to get results. And so I think, part of what creates great leadership is establishing trust, is just being honest and open and establishing trust and being willing to not just say, hey, follow me, but say, follow me, I can get results. And so it's really about showing people, like, look, here's the results. And so what I did is, after I got better, and I wanted to show people, hey, look, this is what you're capable of. This is what we can all, our minds are incredible. This is what you can do with your mind. And it may sound insane, but this is what you can do. And so just started showing people of, okay, look, this is how you use your mind. And so it just kind of grew. And, it just, I think that, just like you said, taking care of yourself first, putting your mask on, being willing to grow and change, and leadership, I think, is something that you become. It's not something you be, it's something that you become.
Definitely. Yeah. One of my beliefs is that kind of within personal development, right? The ultimate goal of personal development is to become a leader. I think that's what it is. It's not like the skill you learn, right? Like conversation, that's like a skill. Leadership's not necessarily a skill, it's a path.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's being willing to get on podcasts and learn what works, what doesn't, and to listen and to really integrate it and to become the change, to look at all angles and really continue growing, because I think that there are some people that they have a sense of wanting to lead, and it comes mostly from ego instead of from passion and from self-drive and from self-change and self-development, and it all starts in a place of self-development.
Definitely, I would agree with that. And there's one thing that I think is really interesting. I'm really good with numbers. It's not like a passion that I have, but I just happen to be good with numbers. And so I did this thing one day, because there's this concept of the 1% principle, right? That if you increase 1% better every single day, over time, you have dramatic change, right? Same concept goes with a penny, right? If I take a penny and I double it every day, right? At the end of a month, you're at like $10 million, right? It's that little change increases over time. And so what I did is I thought, okay, well, what happens if you have one day with a 1% increase and one day with a 1% decrease? And I would say a 1% decrease is where you don't actually actively try and improve yourself. Because the way life works, everything else around you is going to continue to improve, even if you don't. So you're going to be behind 1% if you don't take a step forward, right? Now, if you take 1% better and 1% worse, in your mind, you would think that, oh, you're at the same place you began. But if you do the math, right, you're actually less than the one you were before. You end up with, so if you do 1 times 1.01 times 0.99, right, 1% better, 1% worse, you end up at 0.9999. You're actually a fraction worse than you were before. And I think that happens a lot in life.
Interesting. Which, by the way, if you think about it in an actual, okay, like let's look where that is. You've heard people before where they go through a process of losing weight, and then once they lose weight, they stop, and then they end up gaining more weight. Back. Yeah, plus some. Yeah. There's the negative 1%. They end up gaining it all back plus some.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Absolutely. And so I think, going back to the same point of leadership isn't a monumental thing. It's an everyday thing that builds and builds and builds. And it's who you are and who you show up and the way you show up every day that builds on top of and gets you to where it is where you want to go.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that. Okay. So going into your story again, there's the step which I'm missing is you were broken and then you were healed, right? You developed this in that time, and it's like, how did you do that?
I went through this phase of going, okay, well, there's prayer healing, and I tried that, and then I tried meditation and visualization and all of these things for years. and it didn't work. And what you'll look at is you'll realize that people are like, well, let me meditate. Like there's no plan strategy to it. It's just like, well, let me meditate, let me pray, let me blah, blah, blah. But there's not really like a 1, 2, 3, 4, do this, do this. It's like, let me try and hope this works. Let me try and hope that works. And can prayer healing work? Yes. It's been shown that they can in some cases work. Are there still a lot of people who pray for healing and it doesn't work? Absolutely. And let's be honest, that's what's true. Okay, so if it can work, but it doesn't always work, and there are a lot of people fail at it, or meditation, yes, can it show some improvement? Absolutely. And a lot of people fail at it and don't get the health results. And I'm going, okay, so if it's possible, and the placebo sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, okay, so I know the mind somehow has this ability somewhere. Let me figure out what it is that makes it work when it works, instead of just shooting in the dark of going, okay, well, let me pray this day. Let me visualize this day. Like, I was visualizing, my house sounded like an ashram. I'm like listening to healing music. I'm doing all these things, meditating, sending my pain to the center of the earth, asking God, just praying, turned into begging. All of this stuff. And it didn't work. And so being an engineer and being somebody who's very methodical, that's what really said, okay, what do I need to understand? What do I need to understand about the mind? And then putting it in a step-by-step process. And so I would say something that was key is sometimes like there was parts where I was stuck, where I didn't know the next step and I didn't know what it was. But what I did know is that as long as I kept looking for the answers, somehow it was like a breakthrough came. And so it would take me to the next level. And really it ended up being like the next stuck place. And so, because I was doing something that, that I needed to figure out how to do. And there wasn't really a book on how to do it. And so, even to this day, I'll show people back to back to back how to get results with their mind. And I've taken people who are paralyzed for like 19 years, 7 years, different amounts of time, and show them how to start using their mind, and their legs literally start jumping. I have people who've been bedridden, who were bedridden for years, who are now doing marathons, completely undiagnosed from everything, all in learning how to use their mind to heal. And so, God, universe, divine, whatever you want to call it, I think God is really, really made us as incredible beings. And I think that so it's powerful. But anyway, the point being is that I think that one of the ways that the biggest things is not giving up and deciding what my outcome is and doing whatever it took to just get there and keep breaking through until I got there, and be open to look outside the box. So when you know where you want to go and you're just passionate about it and you're determined, being not attached to the way it has to get done, and being willing to say, okay, this is my outcome and I'll do anything to get there. Kind of like if somebody said, okay, you've got to make it to the other side of town. So like, I live in West Hollywood, and, in Beverly Hills, West Hollywood, it's my main stomping ground, so to speak, LA. So, but if I said, okay, look, I need to make it to Malibu, I need to make it to Santa Monica Boulevard or whatever, I don't have to be attached to what street gets me there. I want to take the best and most efficient way to get there. But if there's a street that's blocked off, I can take a different way. If there's a street that's got a lot of traffic, I can take a different way. But as long as I have my destination in place. And I think that, when you get very clear on your vision, and I was like, okay, look, I want to heal, and it's just about not giving up. And so that was the process. Is really like you mentioned faith, God, universe, divine, faith, whatever. Like I think that God's hand is in everything, and when we don't give up and we keep perseverance towards something and really, really want it, as long as we're working towards it, the answers open up.
You had to have that faith in yourself that you were going to get there. Even when the times were at the most dire, you had to keep that faith in yourself that you had the ability to make it out on the other side all right.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I had to keep it. I would say that some days I had to cultivate it. Like some days it wasn't there. Yeah. So it was about keeping it. and sometimes creating it if it wasn't there, is being smart enough to know that I needed to get my mind there. Like I needed to remind myself all of the reasons that I could do it and all of the reasons that, and then from that place, it's almost like the more our minds know that we can achieve something, the easier we can find the answers. And I guess the best way to really think about that would be to say that it just becomes more clear. Like if we've ever tried to think of somebody's name and we can't think of it, like, oh my God, what's that person's name? What's that person's name?
I'm so guilty of that, by the way.
But it's like sometimes we have a block towards our vision. Like maybe our vision, we just can't see the way to it. But the more that we get clarity on it, the more we can get to it. It's like the answers open up. So like, that like when you know something, but you can't, like, that person's name, and you're like, oh my God, what was that? Okay. Our mind does the same thing towards our vision, towards our dream, towards our goals, towards marketing or whatever that is. And the more that we can get our mind in the right spot, even with, we can't think of somebody's name, we already know it. And so a lot of times when we get our mind in the right spot, we can see more clearly, more easily, and it helps to clear our mind to really get there. And you know exactly what I mean, right?
Yep. I know exactly because I am so guilty of doing that. It's been really bad, and I'm getting better at it every day. But I still have work to do in that area. So
okay, but are you doing the 1%?
That exactly.
There you go.
1% every little day, and I'll get there eventually. Where it happens very rarely. But yeah. So then, what does one have to do in their mind to be able to heal themselves?
This is going to, in some ways, sound really stupid.
That's okay.
And really simple. You ready?
Sometimes so I like to think that the
simplicity is awesome.
The simplest things are the things that need to be focused on more, whether it's in business or health or any of that, right? It's the simplest thing that's usually the key to all of it.
Exactly. And we're just missing it. And so, like, if we look at it very simply, we've heard of somebody being embarrassed and their face turns red.
Yeah.
Okay. Or somebody having anxiety, racing heart, shortness of breath. Okay. Or exactly, right? Anxiety attack. Or sexual thought, sexual physical response. Okay. Or you've heard of scared to death. You've heard of bored to death. Now, if even freaking boredom can kill people, what about the rest of the emotions? Yes, bored to death. Bored to death is a real thing. Scared to death, a real thing. Or there's widowhood effect, where if somebody loses a spouse, a senior loses a spouse, they have a much higher rate of death. Or broken heart syndrome, or failure to thrive in kids and infants that don't get enough love can actually die. And so when you start to look at this for a moment, you go, well, embarrassed, anxiety attack, scared to death, bored to death. Well, what about hurt? What about anger? What about resentment? What about all of those emotions, other emotions? And not only that, but what about the emotions that are stored in the subconscious mind? The fact that we can literally, think back to, like, we can hear a song and all of a sudden we can remember what we were doing 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Yeah.
First heard it.
Exactly. I mean, I was at the gym today with two friends. We were working out, and then this like 80s song came on. We're like, oh my God, what were you doing during this song? And we were sharing that as we were working out. And immediately, and we were all like just laughing, going, oh my God, I was doing this. Oh my God, I was doing that. And so when you look at it, all of those emotions are stored up. And so what I basically found was that even at a subconscious level, I mean, when we look at the mind, it's estimated, even neuroscience estimates that about 90 to 95% of our brain is operating at a subconscious level.
Yep,
exactly.
Which is fascinating, right? It's like the processing power is like 1,000 times more in the subconscious than it is in the conscious. It's crazy.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is we walk around feeling like this small percentage is like driving our life when it's not.
Yeah.
But we perceive it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I started looking at is I started going, okay, well, even if you think about it for a moment, okay, multiple personality disorder, somebody can have different ailments and different issues when they're in different personalities, starting to go, wait a second. And so what it made me realize is that it's not just specifically the emotion. So the emotion is a part of it. So like if somebody's embarrassed, we can see their face turns red. Somebody's anxiety or bored to death, scared to death, but we can also look at it and say, just because somebody's bored doesn't mean they die. Or there are widowhood effect where some people, their spouse dies and then they die shortly after. And sometimes that doesn't happen.
And sometimes they end up living for years and years and years longer than everyone else around them.
Exactly. And we can look at it and we can also see current studies will show type 2 diabetes, like loneliness. Okay. So loneliness has been linked. There's different emotions that we can look at. And so basically what I found in my work is that there are key factors in the subconscious mind that link up. And then when they do, that's what's linked to any type of health issue. And so what I do to show people how to get rapid results is I just show them how to shift it. And then they get out of pain in minutes, or their legs start moving, or their blood sugar drops, or, if they got high blood sugar, all of a sudden, and so I show them how to create this shift all in using their mind to do it. And what's profound is even if you look at studies from Harvard from 10 years ago, they showed that coronary heart disease, that just by having emotional vitality, so optimism, emotional vitality, that it reduced the chances of heart disease by about 50%. Now, if we take into the awareness that heart disease is the #1 cause of death in the US and in the world, and you go, wait a second, emotional vitality reduced the chances of the #1 cause of death by 50%? Huh.
Now, real quick, define emotional vitality.
I'm using the specific wording that they use, but if we look at a general sense, I would say that it's a general sense of being more optimistic, more happiness.
Okay.
And that would be, I would say that I'm referencing their study, and this was by Laura Kubziansky at Harvard.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that there's even more going on, but I'm just looking at a bigger study. So when I take somebody and I show them how to release pain in minutes or something like there are key things that I see in the subconscious mind that have to be shifted, so much so that I can take people back to back to back and show them how to release pain consistently or make changes in their body consistently by using their mind. And or even if you take it back to the Bible, so we talked about emotions, you take it back to the Bible, a merry heart is a medicine to the body. Ill thoughts will dry the bones. And so the problem is how stupid does it sound that it's emotions? And not only that, but people again go, well, this isn't an emotional thing. Like I have blah, blah, blah. But who knows what's in their subconscious mind because it's below consciousness. And so it's for somebody to say, this can't be emotions. Oh, so what's in your subconscious mind, but because it's in your below conscious mind. Your conscious mind is saying, no, it can't be. And you're sure of that, but what's in your, and you start to look at it. It all sounds ridiculously stupid, but when you think about it for a moment and you start to look at it, you go, wait a second, depression's at an all-time high. And you start to also look at the awareness, a few things. You start to look at the awareness that in 2016, suicide became the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 34. And the fourth leading cause of death from somewhere around, it's like 35 to 55. And that happened. And so when you start to look at people's mindset and that we're not great with the mind, and you start to go, well, we've got to be great with emotions and all of that. Well, actually, we're terrible at it. And look at the amount of people on antidepressants, and you start to look at depression being high and then illness. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that go, it can't possibly be my knee injury, my back injury, my blood sugar, my blah, blah, blah. No, they say, no, it's a physical issue, which is always cracks me up when people say, no, it's a physical issue, because then you go back to the awareness that the body's made of atoms and carbon and hydrogen. And so you start to look at it and go, the body's actually made of energy. And so it's really about, going back to Einstein's quote, no problem can be solved by the same level of consciousness that created it, and really getting a different level of consciousness, a different level of awareness. So it sounds stupid that it could be emotions, but it also sounds stupid that somebody could die from boredom, bored to death. Really? Think about that,
And the thing is, on the one end, we actually accept it's possible, because we see people who go into retirement homes and then they die pretty quickly after they go into a retirement home, or like their partner dies and then they get emotionally distraught, and before you know it, they've died. And I've seen this one happen multiple times. Someone contracts cancer and they give up on life and their conditions get worse. And then someone talks to them and gets them out of their funk, and all of a sudden they don't have cancer anymore. I've seen that happen in my family.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of amazing, right?
Yeah.
And so, absolutely. And so when you start to look at it for a moment, it becomes looking outside of the box and realizing that we're amazing. And what's beautiful is a few things. First and foremost, and people would look at it and go, well, I'm happy and all of these things. And it doesn't necessarily mean if somebody's happy, they can't be sick, because it's, again, at a subconscious level. And so it doesn't always necessarily mean that person's in a huge funk, though it can be. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's not as obvious. And, but it's, what's exciting about it is that when we really address what that is and heal in this way and address whatever's in the subconscious mind, our subconscious mind controls our life. It changes our life. So we address what's in the subconscious mind. It affects our life and our outcome. And it's like literally the person that I am today and the way that it changed my life personally is something that I never thought would happen. I mean, I was raised Lutheran. And then I got away from all of that. I was raised with the punishing God. So then, like you bump your knee or your toe or stub your toe or anything, God has punished you. And by the age of like 15, I was like, I don't want anything to do with God and all these punishments.
Yeah. When someone presents you that, everything is always downward, right? It's hard to follow something that's always downward. And now Absolutely. I'm a Christian, and that's not how I see God. And I read the Bible completely differently, but I understand how people can read the Bible in that way.
Absolutely. And that's how I actually, it made me come back to spirituality. But at that point, I mean, at like age 15, I was like, I don't want to do with anything with this God and this punishing God, and I'm going to hell and everything else. And
like, I had one thought, year ago, it's damnation for me, and there's no hope, right?
Yes. Totally. Like everything I did, God has punished you. I was like, well, I didn't even know what I did, but somehow. And so I was screwed. But going through this injury, and so I had just become very, very analytical and network engineering and all of these things. And not only did it help me come back to a spiritual, energetic sense of awareness of energy and the mind, but something that's amazing is a lot of times in our life, people don't really change for real. And what I mean by that is that, let's say somebody has an anger problem. And so they're like, and this is just an example, but let's say somebody has an anger problem and they're like, they get upset and they punch a hole in the wall. And then so in our culture, what happens is that then they go to anger management, and hopefully then every time they get angry, they just go for a walk. Yeah. Now, while it's great that they no longer punch holes in the wall and now they go for a walk, the problem that I see is they're still having the same emotional pattern experience of feeling angry. And that becomes a pattern.
They're just handling it in a different manner.
Yeah, which of course is better. It's better for their hand. It's better for the wall and whatever relationships or kids that they have. So much better improvement.
Because you don't have to fix it, right?
Exactly. Your finances, money's better, hands better. Don't have to get a cast, all kinds of things. But so a lot of improvement, of course, but I want to have a joyful experience, a happy experience. And so prior to my injury, I felt like I was already a happy person, and the level of joy and happiness and connectedness to God and universe, but the level of joy and happiness that I experience on a regular basis now in my life is far beyond what I ever thought was possible. And it's because addressing things in the subconscious mind, really creating these shifts. And as ridiculous as it may or may not seem, it's huge on every level. I mean, the way that who I am, my relationships, my life, every part of my life has changed as a result of that. And it not only that, but it taught me how to change myself. And when we change ourselves and our way of thinking, it changes our life. Einstein would say, imagination is the preview of life's coming attraction. And it's not just conscious, it's subconscious. And so when we really change our mind, we change our life. And so my goal was to change my health. And the outcome of that, as I changed my mind, was not only did I change my health, I changed my life, I changed who I was. And it became the biggest gift of my life. And so it's just profound.
Definitely. So part of what you're talking about is essentially hacking into the subconscious. And that may not be the technical term, but that's how I like to think about it. So how does one go about hacking into their subconscious?
It's a little bit different for everybody, but as far as hacking into the subconscious, I would say obviously one thing is really having a lot of self-honesty, a lot of self-awareness. And I would say that if I'm honest, I would say that hacking into the subconscious mind is in some ways, it's about self-honesty. It's about really understanding the mind. I would say that there's multiple aspects of it. It would be like if I said, how does somebody go about programming a computer? Mm-hmm. You would say, well, learning how to do it, there's a lot of
components.
There's a lot of components. So it depends on the person. I would say that first off, adding in positivity is important. Like one of the things that we do in life, if you look at the way our counseling works, somebody has a depression or an issue or whatever, or stress. If they go to therapy, and they sit there and talk about it. Okay. But when do we ever program in happiness? When do we ever put that in? It's like if I got rid of my couch, would I expect a new one to just jump in its place? I'd have to go get it.
Yeah.
And, when we look at people for a moment, some people have patterns of being funny. Some people have patterns of being kind or loving or sweet or thoughtful or happy or joyful or excited or elated or vivacious. Or, everybody, there's positive emotions, but even when we look at positive, it's not just happy. It's what is that pattern? And so what happens is it's like somehow we go talk about the negative and talk about the negative and talk about the negative, and somehow vivacious is going to pop in, or happiness is going to pop in, or something's going to, it's like magic. Oh, kind. What do you know? Kind just jumped into your mind. It's like if I speak enough German, then maybe I'll know Mandarin. Like whatever you want your mind to know, you have to teach it. You have to get it in your mind. And so I would say it's not only about hacking into the subconscious mind. It's literally, if you were to summarize it, it would be about learning how to bring in the specific positive, learning what drives your mind, and then also understanding and identifying what's in the subconscious mind and getting it out. And so a lot of people will go, oh my God, so there's something in my subconscious mind and I want to get it out. And that's their whole goal. And it would be like, well, wait a second, because if we think about it this way, if we say, okay, look, if a negative emotion or thought or feeling is already bothering a person, do we want to dive right into that emotion and problem? Or do you think we want to start adding in the positive first So to me, it's always a balance, and usually it becomes about first going, okay, what do we need to add in, and identifying specifically what that is, because I always want people to go from here to here to here to here, and it becomes a process of adding in the positive and the right positive, and then also getting rid of the negative, and so then it becomes a process of growth.
Definitely, and there's a few things I can think of with this. One of the things that it makes me think of is from The One Thing. With The One Thing, they talk a lot about habits, right? And if you want to stop a bad habit or a habit you no longer want, one of the things they talk about a lot is don't just try and get rid of that habit, try and install a new habit instead of that habit, right? Because a lot of times when you just leave it kind of blank, right? There's the gap is still there, like you're saying, the couch hasn't come back yet, right? And so now it's just this blank spot. And so commonly what people do is whatever they just took out, because it's still blank and they want something there, they put it right back. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then the other thing I think about, I had an interview with Jeff Jones, and he works with families in addiction. And he has this thing he calls the spotlight diagram. So basically within the family unit, families tend to focus on one thing, right? And whatever that thing is, it's in the spotlight, whether it's a good thing with their grades or, how well their job is going, or it's something negative like addiction, which is what he deals with, right? A lot of times people have that person in the spotlight that's facing the addiction. They take that person out of the environment and put them in through like rehab for 60, 90 days, whatever, right? And then that person comes back, right? And that hole is still there. That spotlight is still there. Mm-hmm. And then the person ends up back in that addiction because the focus is still there.
Absolutely. And it's about creating a replacement. I mean, if somebody went to go get rid of their fridge, and so they were like, okay, I'm going to get rid of their fridge, and there's not a new one, they'd be like, no, give me back my fridge. I still need this fridge. Yeah. I need a fridge.
Food to be cold, or I need to go to the grocery store every day, and that doesn't sound like an option I want to do.
Exactly. And people even do that with food. They go, I'm going to get rid of this junk food. I'm not going to eat it anymore, but they never really decide on what new stuff they're going to eat and like. And so they start going back to that same old food because it's a habitual way of being, and their brain is looking for the answer. Exactly.
They're so hungry. They want food, right? It's midnight and they're like, I don't want to eat ice cream anymore, but I'm really hungry and there's still ice cream here, so I guess I'm going to have ice cream even though I know it's not good for me.
Exactly. So making sure to really understand it and find a replacement, bringing in the correct positive, because once that's in place, it makes it so much easier to change.
Definitely. And I'm curious as to what you think on this concept, because it's one that I've been playing around with in my own life. Is there a way you can, in your experience and all the work that you've done and the studying you do, where you can take what is normally considered a bad emotion and use your subconscious to make it something positive?
Yes and no. It depends on what context you're putting it in. So the thing of it is, a lot of times that the only reason that a negative emotion runs in the first place is because your mind already thinks it's positive. So in other words, let's say somebody has a habit of being angry. They feel like if they get angry, then they're going to get their way. Or they feel like if they get angry, somebody's going to. So there is always anything that is in our mind always has a positive link to it. Like our brain is always trying to help us. And has your brain ever just like run you off of a cliff just randomly?
Oh yeah, definitely. More than I'd like to admit.
But it's doing it for a reason. And so meaning like a physical cliff, your brain has never taken you to the edge of the cliff and just dumped you off the side of a mountain, right? Like an actual mountain.
I mean, I used to do snowboarding, so I have gone up to top of a bowl and look down and be like, my brain's all like, go for it. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for it. So that's the closest I've been to that, but not like a sheer cliff, like with no hope.
Yeah. Like this is the thing. Like, okay, if you tried to cut yourself right now, how easy would that be for you to just take a knife and cut yourself?
I mean, physically, like technically speaking, it's a very easy concept.
No.
But I couldn't
exactly
to do it.
Exactly, because our brains are always trying to help us. So even if you think about the cutter, for example, there are people who cut themselves, and it gives them a feeling of reassurance or feeling of safety or feeling control, and they actually do that. Okay, for most of us, the idea of trying to actually cut ourselves, it would be very hard to get ourselves to do that. And point being is that everything the brain does, it does because it feels like it's helping us. And so like on a real sense, not snowboarding or anything like that, on a real sense, our brain doesn't say, oh, there's a hole, let me go fall in it. Or there's a cliff, let me walk right off of it. Instead, if we got close to a cliff, we'd have reflexes. If a ball was thrown at us, we duck on purpose. Why? Because our brain is linked up to try to help us. If something's thrown at you, you catch it, you duck, you move. We have reflexes that are automatically so fast, willing to try to help us. And so what happens is if we have a reflex to being mad, if we have a reflex to anger, if we have a reflex to a certain emotion, it's because at some level of the mind, we feel like it's helping us. And so what happens is that when you say, is it possible to take a negative emotion and turn it into a positive? It really depends on the context, because for it to already be there, there's already some type of reward link in the mind for it to be there. So if somebody gets angry, they feel like they're going to get their way. Or if somebody gets angry, they feel like they're in control again. And so it feels safe. So there's reasons. But if you actually take a negative emotion and you're wanting to make it into a positive, that you'd actually just have to get rid of the negative emotion and bring in an actual positive emotion.
Yeah, the reason I was asking this, because you went in a completely different direction than my mind was going, which was awesome, because you brought in a whole different insight I wasn't even thinking about. But I had this experience the other day where I'm doing heart rate variability training, and heart coherence is technically what I'm working on, which is trying to align the heartbeats and the timing in between heartbeats with the mind and with your breathing. And so it's basically trying to align all your inner workings. And the science that's shown behind this shows that being able to do that creates a lot of peace in your life and better emotions in general. And so I was going through this process, and there's a monitor that connects to your ear. And when I started the process, I was feeling kind of sad, and my scores were really, really low. Like my coherence was like not there at all, right? And then I had this moment where I said, well, at least I have the ability to feel sadness, because I had this period of my life where I really didn't have feeling at all. Like I knew I should have feeling in certain circumstances, but I just didn't feel. And I remember how terrible that was at that time. And so being able to say, at least I can feel sadness, all of a sudden my coherence shot sky high. It was crazy. Some of the highest scores I've ever gotten. And so that's what I had going in my mind is, how do you take that negative emotion and turn it into something positive? But I definitely see a place where it can get really dark if you try and do that.
Can I speak to that?
Yeah, definitely. Please.
I would say that what you did is you didn't turn it into a different emotion. You actually felt growth, and you're somebody who loves and strives to grow and to be better and to make yourself better and better. And so when you felt that feeling of, at least I can, there's that optimism, that improvement, and that growth. So there was a reward. And so I would say you shifted emotions to a different emotion. So it wasn't about changing it into a positive. It was like, you're kind of like this. If I was like sad and I was like, you know what, at least it's beautiful outside, and I did such a great job yesterday at blah, 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 and this, then instead what I did is I brought in a different emotion, and I'd say what you did, especially because you're somebody who's all about improvement and growth and the 1% and continuing to build and the next level and excellence. Yeah. And so, but you started observing your growth and your excellence and your and so you're like, you know what? Yes. And so part of what that is, so when you look at it going, okay, well, acknowledging myself more will help me get to where it is that I need to go, and really just feeling that. And fantastic. So, absolutely.
I love that because it completely changed the dynamics of what happened there. From what I was thinking was happening, which is the conscious versus the subconscious of what's actually happening.
Yeah, this is the crazy thing, is that a lot of times when we look at emotions, we look at them in a logical way. Okay, kind of like this. You love your mom, right?
Yes, dearly.
Dearly. Okay, have you ever been mad at her?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Now, when you were mad at her, exactly, right? I've never been mad at my mom before. In case you're listening, Mom. And she's never been mad at me. I mean, since I'm perfect and all.
Oh, my goodness.
So anyway, back to reality. So totally. So we've all been there before. We love our moms, and we've been mad at them, and our moms have been mad at us, and they love us, and you know, and children or friends or whatever. But when you loved her and you were mad at her, did you stop loving her?
No, never.
Bingo. And so we can love somebody and we can be mad at them at the same time. We could totally we can be happy. If you've ever heard somebody say, "Oh, that's bittersweet," you know, we can feel so many mixed emotions. And a lot of people go, well, if I'm happy, then I'm this. It's like we can feel so many different mixed emotions at the same time. And a lot of times we do. Like, for instance, some people have this belief that says, like, if we take money, for instance, so I work with people with different things with their mind. Some people will say, well, if I make a lot of money, everybody will hate me. So they have that belief. If I make a lot of money, everybody will hate me and they'll be jealous, you know? Okay. And then they'll have a simultaneous belief that says, and if I make a lot of money, somebody will marry me only for my money. Well, wait a second. I thought you said everybody was going to hate you for your money. And now you're saying they're just going to like you for your money and they're just going to marry you for your money. Yeah. Which one is true? That doesn't make sense. And they don't have to. So a lot of times what happens with our minds is we get all of these conflicting beliefs, and it would be like literally trying to drive a car and go south and north at the exact same time, meanwhile going west part of the time. You'd be like, what? And so a lot of times when we're looking at going towards our vision or our dream or our passion or our business or our health or whatever it is, we have so many conflicting things that it's like we're literally trying to go north and south at the same time with one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake and going, God, I can't figure out why I'm stuck.
And you destroy the car when you do that, right? It's like...
Yeah, well, no, people go like, I'm stuck in life and I don't understand why, and I feel like I'm stuck in a rut, or I feel like there's no way out. And it's like, yes, because one foot's on the gas, one foot's on the brake. You're trying to go north and you're trying to go south, and you're telling yourself that, you know, and so it's, and not only that, but you have your refrigerator that you don't really want to get rid of, and you get rid of it for a moment, but then because you haven't brought anything new in, you're going to pull it back in the same sense. And, but why isn't this working? There's an easy way to do it, and it just takes about understanding. So it's also, about as far as emotions, just like you said, you know, just one emotion never turns into another emotion. So sadness doesn't turn into happiness. Love doesn't turn into hate, but we can run both simultaneously, and sometimes simultaneously, and a lot of times simultaneously subconsciously, just like the money example of going, okay, well, everybody's going to hate me if I make money. By the way, people are only going to like me for money, and somebody will only marry me for money. Then you go, wait a second, people are only going to like you for your money, but by the way, people are going to hate you and be jealous because of your money. And it like, a lot of times, you know, people, when they start exploring their beliefs for change, they go, wait a second, this is all conflicting. It doesn't make sense. No wonder why I feel confused. No wonder I feel that, like, that thing of not being able to think clearly about how to get to the next level. It's because my programming at a deeper level is keeping me from thinking clearly to get to the next level.
Definitely. And from what it seems like, it's the subconscious emotions that you're feeling that you don't recognize that you're feeling that actually end up having the bigger impact overall. Like if subconsciously you're depressed, but you're with your friends and your friends are the only thing that make you happy, but you still have that underlying depression underneath of it. Or, right, your subconscious is really happy and excited about the future and you have a moment of sadness, right? But overall, you're still really happy. It's that subconscious that really drives where you're going.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. The subconscious mind, again, 90 to 95% of the subconscious mind is, 90 to 95% of our brain is being run by our subconscious mind. And it really fuels the direction of our entire life.
Definitely. So Brandy, I know you've got another meeting coming up, and I could honestly talk to you all day because this
Likewise.
is absolutely fascinating. If people want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to go about doing that?
The best way would be to go to my website or my TED Talk. And my website is brandygillmore.com. And Gilmore has 2 L's. So it's Brandy Gillmore, GILLMORE.com.
Awesome. And what's the name of that TED Talk?
It's called "Could This Be the Missing Link to Your Health?" And it's out of TEDx Santa Barbara.
There you go. Awesome. So thank you so much, Brandy. Really appreciate it.
Cody, you are so fun and you're so wonderful. And I just, it has been fun. And I love how you keep it real. Like, it's just like a conversation of like, let's just keep it real. What's real and the authenticity. And I love that. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. 'Cause to me, that's what people are really looking for in life is what's the reality of all this nonsense that's happening? Because there's so much nonsense. There are so many people that just put on this face of being perfection, and like, I know perfection's not real. I know I'm not perfect. I know you're not perfect, and I don't expect anyone to be perfect, right? Because it's ridiculous.
Absolutely. And that's what I love is what's that saying, shoot for the moon, end up among the stars, and exactly. So just, or like you said, shoot for excellence, and just, you strive for it. And it's just, as long as you really strive for it, it just continues to make you better and better. And
exactly.
Well said.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Brandy. I'll talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Cody. Have an amazing rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode. Please make sure to go onto your favorite podcast player of choice and there rate the podcast. Then subscribe so you don't miss any episodes. And then, if you truly want to be a leader, share this episode with someone that you know will be impacted. Because the best leaders fuel not only themselves, but others as well to their heroic potential. If you want to unlock your heroic potential faster, then you will want to join the League of Legendary Leaders, an association of leaders who are dedicated to unlocking their heroic potential, unlocking the heroic potential of others, and where legendary leaders are born. We also have a goal to raise $100,000 monthly to support nonprofits that are actively undertaking causes to impact future generations, including in areas of neurodiversity, character strength, positive psychological research, homelessness, and more. Seize the call now. Go to www.theleadership.guide and click Get Free Guidance Now to propel you on your journey to legendary leadership. I'm your host, Cody Dakota, and I'm honored to have spent this time with you today. My final message for you, and listen closely. It's time. Wake up your heroic potential. Let go of your fears and anxieties, and let's discover what is possible on your journey to become a legendary leader. Emerge and become who you were meant to be.